Very recently I was in Ghana and an old woman said, if we're walking on gold, why is it that we're so poor? What can you say to such a question?
There are about 50 to 60 countries in the world right now that are so-called resource-rich countries. They are extremely rich in oil, gas, and minerals, and yet half or more of their population lives below their poverty line. They can't continue to be dependent on aid. These resources present an opportunity that aren't going to be around forever, and we've got to act now before they're all exploited.
I worked in the World Bank for 25 years. There I remember that in particular my wife Jutta, who was working as a doctor in Nairobi in various poor people's clinics, she began to criticize me that I was not doing anything against corruption. She would say, hey, you have just given them a loan of $10 million. Where are the hospitals? Where are the nurses? Where is the medicine? Disappear somewhere. When we were trying to help in Nigeria, a country which has billions and billions of dollars of oil income. So we felt if we could at least create transparency about the income of the governments in these resource-rich countries, then their own people, their own parliaments, their own institutions could hold them accountable about what they were doing with this money. Therefore, we thought it would be relatively easy to simply talk to the companies and ask them to publish what they pay to the government. And in fact, we were quite successful. Tony Blair was very strong in supporting that, George Soros. A number of companies like Shell or BP, they very quickly said, yes, we are going to do that.
Indonesia, since 2010, has adopted the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Why is it important? Because mining is a resource, a major resource of our Indonesian economy. We are an oil-producing country, coal-producing, gas, minerals, and so on. So basically, mining provides us a basic source of economic development.
We are very often in places where we are mining assets that belong to the state. So it's that much more important that it is clear as to how we are benefiting, or the value of those assets are benefiting the public at large in the countries, and not ending up in the back pockets of government officials or offshore bank accounts. We pay in total $4 billion in taxes on a global basis, and we work to ensure that those benefits are applied to sustainable development in the countries where we operate. Transparency, I think, builds that consensus, that trust, which translates into good governance, which translates into stability of those countries.
But then we ran into difficulties. In some countries where the local governments said you are not allowed to publish what you pay, because you have confidentiality clauses in your investment agreements, and if you publish what you pay to us, we are not going to renew your production rights.
How is it that the child in Mali can have access to opportunities to be able to compete with a child in Singapore? How do we make that possible?
The great moment of triumph was when President Obasanjo of Nigeria, and he said there, I am going to allow the companies operating in Nigeria to publish what they pay to me, to my government. And in fact, I will make it even mandatory. They have to publish what they pay, and I will publish what I receive. And that was basically the breakthrough.
The fact that we could save up to this amount of money meant that we had additional resources to put into health and into education.
The EITI process is actually quite simple. It's a standard that requires that companies disclose taxes and other payments to governments, and for governments to disclose what they have received from companies. An independent administrator compares the figures and publishes them in an EITI report. This allows people to see what has been paid and if money appears to be missing. This process is overseen by representatives from government, companies and civil society in an EITI multi-stakeholder group.
Why is this transparency initiative so important? Because mining resource, oil, gas, coal, are non-renewable resource. So, when this resource are being exploited for the current generation, the future generation will suffer of having no mining resource, non-renewable resource anymore. Therefore, the future generations have the right to know how are we using the mining resource, the non-renewable resource by this current generation, the today generation.
Transparency is the first step. It's not the solution to reversing the resource curse. It's not the solution to all the problems that are associated with the extractive industry. But it's a really fundamental and necessary first step because it at least brings about the information that we need in order to then hold governments to account. And EITI is providing that mechanism for that information to come out. It's about all of us trying to enshrine transparency into our own national processes.
The key is transparency. How much did you receive? What did you do with the money? How are we, the future generation, suffering from this?
The battle against poverty can be won, but it's got to take everybody. It's got to take the private sector looking beyond the mega box of profits and seeing that they are successful only to the extent that environments where they do business really show successful citizens. Governments have to understand that their responsibility is to their citizens. And citizens have to understand that they've got the power to determine the character of leadership.